In honor of the year coming to an end, I'm going to take a moment to look back at some of my favorite books that I read this year. I read over 50 books, and many of them are fantasy, many of them are romance, some are a little out there, but I have a huge stack of books next to me. We have a couple of series on this list and a couple of standalones, and there's not really a real order, although I will say I'm kind of going more 1 to 10, but there's not an exact order. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. The first book I'm going to be talking about here is Sorcery of Thorns. I briefly talked about this in my Reread, Rewrite, Burn episode, and if you can recognize it, it is in the cover, it's in my logo. So I'm going to talk about it again. I absolutely loved it. It's about Elizabeth. She's a teenage girl, and she's been taught her whole life that sorcerers are evil. She's lived in one place her whole life, but then she's forced away from her home, and she's in the hands of the sorcerer Nathaniel Thorne, and she has to rethink everything that she has been taught in a way in order to save the kingdom from the evil Ashcroft. So, a lot of things I loved about this book. The main characters, Elizabeth and Nathaniel quickly became one of my new favorite book couples after I finished the book. The writing style is also really magical, simple to get into. You can imagine everything really easily. And also it's a little bit like a grown-up Disney movie a little bit. It has kind of like this magical, nostalgic feeling while also having a little bit more action, a little bit more intensity. I think Elizabeth in particular, she's kind of like a more naive version of Belle from Beauty and the Beast. She's curious, she loves reading, but she can also be quite stubborn. And then Nathaniel's very mysterious, a bit sarcastic. When you meet him, you're not really sure what to make of him, but then as you read more, learn more about his backstory, you quickly fall in love with him. And he also has this demon Silas, who, similar to Nathaniel, you're not sure what to make of him at first, but once you learn everything that he and Nathaniel have gone through, you quickly grow attached to their bond and you want to make sure that they get out okay. And I love this book so much that when my sister and I had a little road trip back in June and throughout the summer really, we would listen to this on Audible, and I absolutely loved it again. So for the first series on this list, I have a whole video devoted to it, but it's the Caraval Trilogy. So it's about two sisters. Well, actually, the point of view changes throughout the series. The first one is centered around Scarlet. She's dreamed of going to Caraval her whole life, which is this big magical event, and she's ultimately kind of forced into it. She wants to go, but she's fearful because her father is terrible to her and her sister, and she's going to be married soon. But then Tella, her younger sister, gets captured, and she has to go save her during Caraval. Then you have the sequel, which is Legendary. This one follows Tella, and she's trying to uncover more secrets about their mother who left them when they were very young. And then finally, you have Finale, which focuses on both sisters as they learn more about their history, specifically about their mother, and they get all the answers that they've been wanting. So similar to Sorcery of Thorns, the vibes of this I absolutely love. Caraval is very mysterious, magical. I kind of want to go to it, even though I would accidentally get swept away, probably even. But also, all the descriptions, you can easily imagine what's going on, all the fashions. It's very indulgent in a way. I think that's why I love it so much. And there's a reason I am so looking forward to reading the spin-off series, Once Upon a Broken Heart, next year. Most of the books I read this year were for the first time. However, the notable exception is the Percy Jackson series, as well as the sequel series, The Heroes of Olympus. So I read the series when I was in middle school I had a great time with it, and then later on with the new series coming out, I still have to watch season 2, but I decide I'm going to reread this series because it's really well loved and I want to remember everything, and I absolutely loved it. I love the characters, the setting of the camp is a lot of fun. Rick Riordan's writing style, especially in the first book where you have Percy being the first person narrator. Firstly, I think he might be a better protagonist than Harry Potter. Sorry, not sorry. And his bond with his best friends, Grover and Annabeth, it's really touching and sweet. And I love the action throughout. I mean, Last Olympian is essentially one big battle scene, which is wonderful. And overall, I had a really good time coming back to Camp Half-Blood, and I look forward to revisiting it again in the 2030s. So the next couple of books I'll be talking about, I don't have a visual book with me because I borrowed them from the library, so I'll do my best to put them on the screen. But anyway, another favorite of mine that I read this year is the King of Scars duology. It's the final installment in the Grishaverse. You have the original Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology, both series I read last year, with Six of Crows being one of my favorites. And I had a lot of fun revisiting Grisha. This time we're focusing on Nikolai, primarily, who was my personal favorite character in the original Shadow and Bone trilogy. And as we see him he's now king, but he also has things to worry about, specifically the demon within him that he was cursed with, as well as his illegitimate status that people still gossip about, especially with the original heir, his older brother, having been killed. And we also get to catch up on Nina, who was from the original Six of Crows series. And I didn't enjoy it as much as Six of Crows, but I still really loved the atmosphere and seeing a lot of the characters that I've come to grow to love throughout all of the books in the Grishaverse. Other book that I borrowed from the library this year that I absolutely adored was Wings of Starlight. I do have a video for this, so if you want a little bit more details, you can go check that one out. But is the love story between Queen Clarion and Lord Malloy. We find out a little bit of it in the Secret of the Wings movie, and now we're getting more detail about it, and I absolutely loved it. It is a nostalgic masterpiece. The love story is tragic but absolutely beautiful. I was getting so emotional when I was talking about it in my video devoted to the book alone, and it really made me want to rewatch all of the Tinkerbell movies to relive my nostalgic memories. The Phantom of the Opera was my favorite classic that I read this year. I've been a huge fan of the Andrew Lloyd Webber show for years, so finally getting around to reading the source material was amazing. I read it during spooky season. I also have a video for this one, and similar to a lot of the books that I've been talking about, the vibes are I love them. I am a huge Gothic fan. You never know exactly what is going on. You see a little bit of the Phantom, his actions, and everyone's like wondering, is the Phantom real? Is this a trick? If he is real, is he a ghost or is he a guy? And even then, you don't, like when we're following Christine, we don't know until she reveals a lot to Raoul on the rooftop. And similar to all these books on the list, I look forward to rereading it in the 2030s. If you know me, you know that I absolutely love dragons. So it was no surprise that I absolutely loved Eragon. It is about a young farm boy named Eragon. Yes, Eragon is the farm boy, not the dragon. And it's a little bit like the How to Train Your Dragon movie where he finds a dragon, but he doesn't, okay, it's not a dragon. Little Saphira is still in the egg when he finds her, and he finds it and thinks I can just get some money off of it, but then he finds out it's a dragon, and he doesn't want to expose her because he believes he could be killed if if they know he has a dragon, because dragons are not well loved. People believe that they are dangerous, and throughout it you have a bunch of characters, you have backstory. I also have a review devoted to this one if you want more details. But yeah, I really look forward to continuing the series and seeing what happens next to Aragon and Saphira. Coco, a story about music, shoes, and family, is essentially the novelization of the Pixar film Coco, which is one of my favorite movies from the studio. And I really loved getting to revisit the story, and it does have a little bit more detail, some more backstory, specifically regarding the title character. We see how she fell in love with her husband, as well as like how she felt a little bit about her mother's ban towards music after her father left, and how even though it was forbidden within her household, she still listened to music. They talk about how she would secretly go down to like the town square and dance, which is actually how she met her husband. And we see how much she really still thinks about and cares for her father Hector, even though she and her mother believe he abandoned them. And just getting to revisit the story again, it's about, family, which means a lot to me, and I really love the Dia de Muertos setting, and it makes me really excited to rewatch Coco again. Thick as Thieves is the penultimate novel of the Queen's Thief series. I've been reading the series through the last couple of years, and what's interesting about it is there's not necessarily a true protagonist, and the style of writing is a little bit different. In the first book, it's in first person, and we're following Jean, and then in the second one, it's third person, where we have a little bit of Jean, but we also have the Queen of Atolia, Irene, and then in the third book, we follow a soldier, and then in the fourth book, we have this character. And then this one, it's back to the first person perspective, and we follow Kamet. He is a slave, but then his master dies, and people believe that he did it, so he has to be on the run, and he has to team up with somebody else. I believe it was an Anatolian. And looking back at it, it's kind of like a more serious version of Sorcery of Thorns with a little bit less magic. I think the series is a little bit more political compared to a lot of other young adult fantasy novels. And I think that's something I really like about it. And with this being the penultimate novel, I'm excited to read the final book next year, even though I think I'm gonna miss it a little bit. The last book I'm gonna be talking about today is The Other Bennet Sister. This is a bit of an unofficial sequel to Pride and Prejudice. We are following Mary, who is the middle child of the Bennet family, and in the original book, she's awkward. She doesn't really have any desires to get married. Everybody's like, yeah, she's gonna be the spinster of the family. She loves to read. And the beginning of the book takes place before the events of Pride and Prejudice, and there might be a little bit of interlap between this and the original story, but most of it takes place after Pride and Prejudice, a couple of years, and all Mary's sisters have officially been married off. She's still unmarried. And it's a little bit like Persuasion, where we have a character nearing spinsterhood. She's reflecting a little bit on her life, but then she meets somebody. She actually meets a couple people, and she starts to believe, like, maybe I can actually get, like, a happily ever after. I can find true love, even though a lot of things have not been well for me, with death in my family and how other members of my family treat me sometimes, and I can't really find a place to belong. And I love the reflective tone of this. I like how Mary she has a little bit of sass within her, but she is, especially later on in the story when she's losing a little bit of faith, if in herself she's a more quiet, reflective character. And that's something I really liked about this novel, and finally seeing Mary, even though she doesn't have an unhappy ending in Pride and Prejudice, we get a true romantic tale with her, and she's truly happy at the end of it. So those were some of my favorite books that I've read in 2025. I look forward to seeing what I read in 2026. I'll be continuing a lot of these series, finishing some up, finally getting the answers to some, and hopefully reading new series to fill the void in my heart from the ones that have finished. If you enjoyed this, please share it with your friends. I'm Louisa Hammond, and I'll see you next time.